This is a Mercedes, and I am naked. And today, I'm going to show you how we do an exterior and what makes a detailer's exterior different than something you do at home or at one of those local spray washes. So let's get that process started. First part of the detailing process, obviously we have a dry car. Let's make that a thing of the past. Okay, so the first part of the process, what you just witnessed, obviously you want to pressure wash the car. You're going to do things like the wheel arches, give the rim and the rubbers a good spray down. Try to get any caked on dirt. And obviously one of the other things that you're going to do is add a little bit of lubricity, meaning lubricate the paint, so that when you go to do your touch wash using a Chanel washcloth, you will be doing it in a much safer manner than if you were to obviously do it on a dry car that is still caked on with dirt that you might not even necessarily see. So I typically, now you're going to see a lot of detailers will argue about this, but I like to start with the rims because typically the rims are in contact with the road, meaning they're probably going to be one of the dirtier parts of the car. I think it's better to get that done and then you kind of work top down from that point. Then we're going to do things like brush the emblems, brush any little emblems like that, you know, your bi-turbo emblem on this one, front emblems. Actually, let's go over to the grille. So a lot of these new cars, they have these beautiful, annoyingly intricate grills. So this one's actually not terrible, but the problem is there's just a lot of surface area that you're going to have to brush. Now, to be totally frank, depending on how dirty that grill gets, unless you dress it later, it probably will fade from the sun. But doing regular detail maintenance work, which actually this is a perfect example of. So as you can see, the water is beating up on the car and it's also probably drying, which is partly why I'm naked, because it is boiling hot outside and I'm not doing an exterior clothes. Sorry. Now, that being said, so these beautiful little beads here are actually part of what we do in our maintenance washes. So the car is ceramic coated. There are different methods of ceramic, so I'm not going to explain that, but let's say it's ceramic coated, which is doing two things: protecting the paint from UV rays, also protecting the plastics on the grills and stuff like that. It's just a really good method of longevity. It'll keep the car prettier longer, and the more that you do it, the car will just remain lustrous, shiny. All right, so let's do the rim next. Okay, so I'm going to briefly explain the process in which we clean a wheel, or rim and tire. So this is a pH neutral, I call it a wheel acid just because that's what I've been calling it forever. So I'm gonna call it a wheel acid. Typically you'd call it like an oxidative chemical. So you'll notice that it will help make the rim face really shiny. It's gonna, especially on these cars with bigger brakes, it's going to eat away the brake dust that leaves that sort of like matte finish on your rims. I'm sure some of you watching this are probably like, oh, I hate that. Then we're gonna spray all-purpose on the rubber, give the rubber a good scrub. I'm gonna brush through the rims, and I've got this wheel barrel brush to kind of push some more of the dirt away. Now, you won't always get into some rims depending on the clearances of the brakes. These are big brakes, so I might have some issues there, but the pressure washer should push most of it out, and then you'll have a clean rim face. So I'll start with the oxidative chemical. Now this particular chemical will also oxidize the brakes behind it. It just takes a quick break on the road and it will get rid of that. It will look like rust, I'll be honest. It is simply just oxidation. So we'll spray the all-purpose. So I'll hit the all-purpose part first as the oxidative chemical sort of does its thing. So you want to be careful here. You obviously don't want to be hitting the plastics or the rim. I'll be totally frank with you, in a lot of these modern cars, these rims are pretty rough, tough, not rough. So don't beat yourself up if you give it a little scratch, because you probably won't damage it. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna brush the rim face to make sure that whatever we have oxidized, we are going to mobilize or agitate, so that when we go to pressure wash the rim later, it will look clean and will not have that ugly matte appearance, which is really unattractive. So these rims are kind of tricky, as you can see, but as long as you're careful, you can get the brush in there and do what you gotta do. Okay, give it a pressure wash, and that's the rim process. Now we use a 2-bucket wash method. 1 bucket designated to be soap. We call that the clean water bucket, and then this water typically doesn't get too filthy, but we'll call this the dirty water bucket. So they both have, I don't want to pull it up just in case there's dirt at the bottom. There isn't, but they have dirt traps, and they work pretty effectively. You could probably, honestly, at this point, just use a single bucket. So, top-down method, typically the top of the car is going to have the least amount of exposure. So I like to start at the top of the vehicle and then just sort of work my way around. So I'll do top, start with the windows. In this instance, because the car is not overly dirty, I'm not going to keep returning to my wash bucket, but just in case somebody makes mention of that, because it's the internet, on a dirty vehicle, I'm much more cautious. In this instance, because this car is regularly maintained, there's no reason to clay bar it, but because I know who the owner is, and for the sake of example, in the instance that you had a soiled panel, you use a clay bar. So typically, you knead the clay bar into a pancake, and very, very lightly, almost with no pressure, you would, as you're sort of soaping the vehicle down, depending on how soiled the car is, you might have to soap it down, rinse it, and then clay bar the car. But in a car like this, you would just very lightly just... And so what a clay bar will do is pick up any contaminants that are actually within the clear coat, because like your skin, it is porous. Okay. So we're going to continue washing the car down. In the instance that the car was dirty, we would probably be introducing the clay bar as well, as you just saw. In this instance, there's no need to, because the clay bar does potentially cause a slight risk to mar the paint. Any contact you make with the paint will create the risk of marring the paint. And so, in the instance that somebody asks me, well then why don't you do a touchless wash? Because if you want an honest opinion, you will never properly clean the car if you just solely use a touchless wash. Unless you're maintaining it on a very regular basis from basically the day of inception of that vehicle. Okay, so this is my personal favorite part. I do enjoy using these brushes. So the car's been soaked down. Now I like to do just sort of the finishing touches. So you can, I like to do things like brush the headlights into the little cracks in the corners like this. In this instance, I'm gonna brush the whole headlight because I know this car is driven on the highway here. And where we're located, the highway is near a lot of either agricultural land or just barren, grassy land. And so there are many bugs on the highway. And so a step like this can go a long way in regards to restoring the appearance of the vehicle. So there are bugs behind that plate. If you notice that there's still bugs there, so something I'm probably not going to illustrate in the video are, because of that whole bug problem, there are bugs that I just noticed that didn't come off with the contact wash, so I'm just going to briefly go over them later on with the clay bar, which I showed you, to show you the effect of the clay bar. Now, the next step, I like to use this air dryer that will help dry out the crevices. Then obviously sort of assist it with the towel just to kind of help things move along. Then when we get to the point that we're satisfied with the dryness of the car, we're gonna recoat it with a spray-on ceramic sealant. Again, different types of ceramic, but that's the method that we're using on this car. It's been working very effectively. So we'll continue that way. And let's get that started.
Go.
All right, so we have a beautiful C43 again. That was sort of a taste in what a detailer goes through in their process of detailing a vehicle. If you're a potential customer, that's definitely a service that we can offer for you. If there are other things that you want to have done, for example, if you have plastics that are starting to age, we can do things like restore them or dress them. And it's definitely something that I'd recommend. If you love your car, you should be maintaining it.
Yeah.